But I want to go to Apollo Gonzalez. He's an executive producer level member here at the Young Turks, and he had a question for us. Apollo, after we've kept you waiting for 49 minutes, what do you got for us?
I was wondering if TYT and you fight against, I'm sorry, for HIV decriminalization, cover stories more related to the corporate media that sensationalizes stories about HIV, and maybe work with AIDS United or Positive Women's Network that are big organizations that are trying to educate the U.S. about HIV, because in theory, we could get rid of it in one generation with proper funding.
Okay. My IFB after wearing it, and it's super annoying, after wearing it for 3 hours, chose not to work just at that time. So someone else answer his question. I caught the last 3 seconds of it, and I think I have it written down, but...
the corporate media sensationalizes HIV, and Apollo's belief, and the belief of other activists, is that we could get rid of it within a generation with proper, dedicated funding, and that we cover some of that, I think, media sensationalism of HIV. I don't really, I think he's probably right, but I don't actually know exactly what he means by that.
Okay,
as far as the sensationalization.
Yeah, so Apollo, tell us a little bit more about that, because I got my IFB working now. What do you mean by the sensationalism in the coverage of HIV?
There are several stories. Oklahoma, for example, somebody was just sentenced for 40 years. There wasn't any hard evidence. Anytime somebody sneezes, in our state, Oklahoma, if somebody sneezes, sweats, and you bump into them, their sweat gets on you, you have the right to call and charge them with a state felony.
Yeah, all right.
They will get arrested. The news will pick up and say transmission of HIV. I was a victim of this 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. That's why I'm passionate about it. I was arrested for intentionally sneezing to intentionally spread HIV.
Oh, Jesus.
I am an HIV advocate, and so I'm very open about my status.
So this is about the decriminalization of it too, of the criminalizing of having HIV.
Yeah. So Apollo, that's a super interesting story. I never heard that story before. Do you think they must have targeted you, right? I mean, how the hell did they know that you sneezed and found a guy who was aggrieved by your sneeze? So tell me about how you think this went down and why they went after you.
Anybody, if you're open about your HIV status in Oklahoma, anyone who doesn't like you for whatever reason could go up to you and call the police right there and say you cried on their shoulder, you sweated on them, you sneezed, with the intention of spreading HIV, even though there's no possible way. The law is draconian and archaic, and in Oklahoma, we have tons of progress we need to make.
So Apollo, see, this is why I love being connected to our members. Honestly, I didn't know that, and I feel terrible for not knowing that. Thank you for letting us know that, and we will certainly investigate that, cover that. Do you know how many states that have laws like that?
Vast majority, some of them. I believe Indiana classifies people with HIV as a bioterrorist because
Can't believe Mike Pence would let that go on.
The stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. So, like, when you read about the back when the Kansas legislature was, when the Koch brothers sort of orchestrated the takeover, that was the school board actually, but real right-wing legislatures, like we'll stay with Oklahoma. That was they either passed it or tried to pass the Sharia law ordinance, right? Like those people don't stop at, if you believe one crazy thing, that's the danger of having these, what is the number of, do we know the number of Republican-run state legislatures?
I do, yeah, 69 out of 99.
So counting both houses. Okay,
yes.
All right, so I'll go with that. Yeah, I was going to say it's like 33 or 36, so whatever, that number doubled, basically.
Must be 98, though.
No, it's 99 because Nebraska is only one, and there's 50 states.
Isn't there another unicameral house?
No.
Just Nebraska.
You just wanted to say unicameral.
Thanks.
That's so transparent. Cut out that clip. That'll be great. That'll get a lot of hits. That's the danger of these things. And they're not, all of these people aren't, up on TYT interviews now, my interview with Harvey K. Like, he's very careful. These aren't conservatives. These are reactionaries in many of these states. This is not normal conservatism. This is not, you know, the arguments we used to have. This is not Howard Baker and Richard Lugar. Those guys are gone. Like, we would have argued with those guys, but they're not even around anymore. These are real reactionaries, and if you're going to pass a law which makes Sharia a crime because either you think there's a danger of Sharia law, which is comical all by itself, or you think that you don't understand that the Constitution, our country, would prevent a legislature advancing Sharia law, or what we all know is you're just trying to scare people. Like, and it dovetails nicely with your paranoia.
Right, well,
those laws are going to be replicated in different forms, like people who have HIV or bioterrorists.
Well, and scaring people has a lot of political utility, too.
It does, yes.
So there's that. And I think in terms of Apollo's points, I think he's really raising 2 points. And I mean, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but one is the demonization of people with HIV and the people, gay people primarily, you know, so there's the othering, there's, creating the sense that that people with this illness are other. But the other piece of it, the huge piece of it that he alluded to is, there's a whole economic force at work here of big pharma and others. There are ways that we could make drugs available to treat this illness that we're not doing. There are preventive measures we could take that we're not taking. So, it all comes together when you have people like the Koch brothers helping to fuel this kind of fear and hatred. Then not only does that reinforce them politically, but everybody, their voters, are distracted from the economic measures and the other steps we could take to reduce or eliminate this disease. So big pharma benefits, people like the Koch brothers benefit on environmental rules, and this sort of primitive, religiously driven hatred gets reinforced. So it's all tying together in my mind.
So, Apollo, one last thing for you, and I promise you that when we hire the next investigative reporter, this will be one of the things they look into, let alone the stories we'll do on the Young Turks. But do you have a sense of how many people in the country have been arrested based on these laws?
There's an organization called HIV is Not a Crime Academy based in Alabama. They keep track of that. But here in Oklahoma, arrested versus convicted are two different things. I was arrested, blasted all over the news, not convicted. However, there are several arrests that happen throughout the country, and depending on, granted, the southern states where we tend to be fact resistant, we usually arrest people based on those, but it is quite up there in numbers.
All right, Apollo Gonzalez, Young Turks member from Oklahoma, shedding light on a super important issue, and even to us. So, meaning we didn't even know about it to the degree that we should. Thank you so much, Apollo. Really, really appreciate it.
I am
All right.
Appreciate you.
super jealous of Apollo's eyebrows.
Yeah, well, I'm jealous of his name. How cool a name is Apollo Gonzalez?
Apollo Gonzalez is
It's a good name. What's his porn name? Can't beat Apollo Gonzalez. Also, he says organization like he's from Canada, like he's a hockey fan.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yet he lives in Oklahoma.
Exactly. So he's not.